My hands were shaking the moment I pressed play on that voice note. A single mistake, a slip of his thumb had sent me something he never meant for me to hear. His voice, once soft, once the anchor of my days, cut through me like glass. Mom, I can't keep pretending much longer. This whole loving husband act is exhausting me. My blood ran cold. The words didn't belong to the man I thought I married. They belonged to a stranger. I remember staring at the wall, the patterns of light from the blinds dancing across my office desk, while my heart sank deeper with every sentence he spoke. He mocked me, mocked my work, mocked the life I thought we were building together. In his voice there was no love, only calculation, only betrayal. I was 32 years old, a woman who had clawed her way from a small town where dreams were treated like foolish hobbies to a career in design that was finally taking root. My husband Carlos had been my biggest supporter, or so I thought. He was the one who carried coffee into my office every morning, who told me I was brilliant, when I doubted myself, who introduced me proudly as his wife. Or maybe all of that had just been a disguise carefully woven to keep me blind, while he set fire to everything I was. In that one accidental recording, the truth came crashing down. He was going to divorce me the second he had his claws on my biggest project, and he had already been siphoning off my clients in the shadows. The walls of my office seemed to close in as I listened to him speak Isabella's name. Isabella Martinez. Of course it was her, the wealthy investor, whose smile lingered too long when she looked at him, whose perfume hung in the air long after she left meetings. I used to brush off the jealousy that pricked at me whenever I caught them exchanging glances, because I trusted him. I trusted him with my heart, my career, my future. And in return, he was stealing it all. He called me pathetic, a small-town girl with big dreams. He laughed at the very thing that kept me alive when the world doubted me. I couldn't breathe. For a long moment, I thought my chest might cave in completely. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of what I thought was partnership, crumbled in seconds. The flowers he brought home, the kisses before bed, the whispered promises about children, and forever they were nothing but props in his performance. I stared at the designs for the Grandview Hotel glowing on my laptop screen. My masterpiece. The contract that was supposed to put my name on the map. And he was planning to take it, put his signature on it, and erase me as though I'd never existed. When my phone buzzed again, it was a text. Sorry, babe. Sent you something by mistake. Just ignore that voice note. Love you. Love me. The audacity nearly made me laugh. He didn't even know what love was. In that moment, grief burned into rage. I was done being the naive girl grateful for scraps of affection. He thought he had played me perfectly, but Carlos underestimated me. He always did. I copied the voice note onto every device I owned. I created backups, hid them where no one could touch them. And then I opened my laptop. Hands trembling not with fear anymore, but with resolve. Divorce lawyers, business attorneys, fraud investigators, I searched them all. If he wanted war, he was about to get it. A storm was rising inside me, one I didn't even know I was capable of. That evening, he came home like nothing had happened. Flowers in his hands, lips curling into that smile I used to melt under. He kissed me, asked me about my day, poured wine into my glass, and I played along. I smiled, I laughed, I touched his arm when he told me stories. But under the table, my nails dug into my palms so hard it left crescent-shaped wounds. He thought the game was his. What he didn't know was that I had already moved my first piece. 6 months earlier, I would have sworn I was the luckiest woman alive. He'd surprised me with breakfast in bed, strawberries and pancakes shaped like hearts. He'd looked at me with pride when my designs won contracts. I believed we were a team. But looking back, I see it clearly now. Every kind gesture was just a rope tightening around my neck. Every kiss was a distraction. Every "we're in this together" was another step in his plan to replace me with Isabella. His mother had always despised me. Maria Torres never missed a chance to remind me I wasn't worthy of her son. She made her disapproval known in every icy look, every backhanded remark about my background, my family, my clothes. That day in the recording, when I heard her laugh in the background, it all clicked. She had been part of it from the beginning, feeding him poison about me, whispering that I wasn't good enough, pushing Isabella into his path. But Maria made the same mistake her son did. She thought I was weak. She thought I'd crumble under the weight of betrayal. What she didn't understand is that women like me don't break. We burn. And so that night, while Carlos slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart racing with a clarity I had never known before. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry at his feet asking him why. I wasn't going to sink into the shadows he wanted to bury me in. I was going to rise, and I was going to take him down piece by piece until there was nothing left of the empire he had built on my back. The voice note that was meant to end me had lit a fire inside me instead. He thought he was the hunter and I was his prey, but what he didn't know was that he had just created a predator. I couldn't sleep after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Carlos's smirk as he sat across from Isabella, whispering about the future they would build on the ashes of my life. The betrayal carved itself into my skin like fire, and with every thought of it, my resolve hardened. I began to move in silence, playing the dutiful wife, while secretly plotting his downfall. The first step was to find the cracks he didn't realize he had left behind. He had been careful, yes, but arrogance makes men sloppy. One morning while he showered, I opened his phone. I had never done it before. Trust had always been my weakness. I used to believe love meant giving him the freedom to be himself without question. But now I knew better. The passcode was easy, it hadn't changed in months. What I found made my stomach churn. Hundreds of messages between Carlos and his mother Maria. For nearly 2 years she had been poisoning his mind against me drip by drip. Every cruel thing I'd ever felt in her presence had been amplified behind my back. She catalogued me like I was a defective product. My clothes too plain, my parents too modest, my laugh too unrefined. "She'll embarrass you in front of real clients," Maria wrote. "She doesn't belong in our world." And slowly Carlos had started to agree. But it didn't stop there. The messages revealed that Maria had practically handed Isabella to him. She arranged their accidental meetings, created excuses for dinners, even encouraged weekends away under the guise of business trips. My chest tightened as I scrolled through his replies, the slow shift in his words. From "I love Nina" to "Maybe you're right, Mom" to "Isabella understands me in ways Nina never will." I had thought Maria's disapproval was shallow snobbery, but it wasn't. It was strategy. She wanted me gone, and now I had proof of her hand in it all. I sat on the bathroom floor reading until my eyes burned. They had planned everything, my ruin, his freedom, their future. They thought they were clever, untouchable. But as I stared at the screen, I realized they had made the worst mistake possible. They documented it all. Every manipulation, every betrayal, every blueprint for what they wanted to do to me. And now it was in my hands. The next day, I started digging into my own business records. My design studio had been my pride, the thing I had built with my bare hands. But suddenly, I looked at it with new eyes. I scrolled through emails, client files, invoices, and what I found nearly broke me. There were replies I had never written, apologizing for personal issues, suggesting that maybe clients should work with Carlos instead. There were forwards my designs, my strategies, my client preferences, all sent directly to his private account. And worse, there were emails to competitors selling my designs under my name. He had set me up. He hadn't just stolen my clients, he had made me look like a thief. I picked up the phone and called one of my oldest clients, the Peterson Group. My voice shook as I introduced myself, but their response shattered me further. "Oh, Nina, we thought you knew. We're working with your husband now. He told us you were overwhelmed." My stomach turned. They thought I was unreliable. They thought I had fallen apart. And Carlos had been the one to paint that picture. When I called Coastal Properties, I nearly collapsed. The receptionist's voice was sharp. Ms. Torres, after what you did with the Martinez project, I don't think we'll ever be able to work with you again. The Martinez project. Isabella. My designs sold behind my back, stamped with her company's name. I dug through Carlos's laptop that night and found them. My work stripped of my name, repackaged as Isabella's brilliance. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional, financial, total. He hadn't just wanted to leave me, he wanted to erase me, to make sure that when he was done, no one in the industry would ever trust my name again. He wanted me invisible, forgotten. But as I stared at the stolen files, a strange calm settled over me. If he thought I would crumble, he didn't know me at all. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of dignity. I wasn't going to fight for his affection. No, I was going to fight for me, and I was going to win. I needed help. There was only one person I could trust. Someone Carlos had always dismissed, someone who had been quietly watching from the sidelines. Antonio Rivera. He was my silent partner, a contractor who had believed in me when I had nothing. Carlos never liked him, thought he was just a background player. But Antonio had always seen through him. I remembered the way he once said, "There's something off about Carlos. He smiles too much when he talks about your business." Back then I had laughed it off. Now I realized he had been right. That night I called Antonio. It was late, but he came immediately. I played him the voice note, showed him the messages, handed him the photos of Carlos and Isabella. I watched fury darken his face as the truth settled in. He leaned forward, voice low and steady. "If you want to destroy him, Nina, I'm in. Whatever it takes." For the first time since hearing that voice note, I exhaled. I wasn't alone. Together we began to map out a plan, not just to survive, but to strike back. We called it Project Freedom. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about reclaiming everything Carlos thought he could take from me. And in the quiet of my kitchen, under the harsh light of the overhead lamp, I made myself a promise. Carlos had spent 3 years planning my downfall. I would dismantle his empire in 3 weeks, and I would make sure he never saw it coming. The days that followed blurred into a storm of quiet preparation. Every morning I wore the mask of a dutiful wife. I kissed Carlos goodbye at the door, packed his lunch, and smiled when he promised he was heading out to meet clients. I knew better now. His client meetings were dinners with Isabella, stolen afternoons in hotel rooms, whispered promises of a future where I didn't exist. But I never let the mask slip. If he suspected I knew everything I was building would collapse before it had the chance to begin. With Antonio by my side, we began securing everything Carlos hadn't already touched. What he never realized was that Antonio had been protecting me long before I even suspected I needed protecting. "I've been backing up your files on my servers," he admitted almost sheepishly. I didn't trust him. Something about the way he hovered over your work didn't sit right. I wanted to cry, but instead I knotted my throat tight with gratitude. While Carlos had been pretending to shield me, Antonio had been guarding me from the shadows, quietly building walls around the parts of me Carlos couldn't corrupt. We worked until dawn most nights, cataloging evidence, setting up a new company under my name, and Antonio's stake, moving funds into accounts Carlos couldn't access. Every screenshot, every stolen file, every text message between him and his mother became another weapon in my arsenal. I was learning to wield betrayal like a blade. But the plan wasn't just about paperwork. It was about timing. Carlos thought he had orchestrated the perfect moment to strike right after I signed the final papers for the Grand View Hotel project. He was certain he would emerge victorious, holding both the contract and Isabella's hand. What he didn't know was that I had already met with the Grand View executives. Sitting across from them in their polished boardroom, I laid out the evidence. Every forged document, every email he had sent from my account, every stolen design. Their faces hardened as they realized how close they had come to being swindled. "We'll be terminating any agreements with Mr. Torres immediately," they told me. "And we'll be pursuing legal action." That victory lit something inside me. For weeks I had felt powerless. Now for the first time I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. Carlos wasn't invincible. He was careless, and his arrogance was going to be his undoing. Still, I knew one move alone wouldn't be enough. If I wanted to dismantle everything he had stolen, I needed allies, people who had as much to lose as I did. Antonio leaned back in his chair one night, a half-empty mug of coffee cooling in his hands. "There's someone else you should talk to," he said carefully. "Roberto Martinez." The name hit me like a slap. Isabella's husband. The man she was betraying with the same smile she had once turned on me. Antonio explained quietly that Roberto was one of his biggest clients, a man of power and influence who had no idea his wife was bleeding him dry with Carlos's schemes. If he knew, Antonio said he would take everything from them, and he has the resources to do it. The thought made me hesitate. Dragging another person into this storm felt cruel. But then I remembered Isabella's hand stroking Carlos's at that restaurant, the way she wore the bracelet he bought her with money siphoned from my clients. Cruelty was already at play. I was just choosing not to be its victim. 2 weeks later, everything was set. The lawyers had my evidence. Antonio and I had secured my business. The Grandview contract was safe. Now came the final stage detonation. It began on a Monday. While Carlos was slipping into Isabella's office to gloat about the future they thought they were stealing from me, I was sitting across from an investigator at the State Real Estate Board. His eyes widened as I laid out my folder of proof emails, forged contracts recordings. "This is serious fraud, Mrs. Torres," he said. "We'll be suspending his license immediately." Tuesday belonged to Roberto. He arrived at Antonio's office expecting to discuss renovations, only to find me waiting with photos, documents, and recordings. His face turned to stone as he studied the evidence. At first he didn't speak. Then his jaw clenched, his voice steady but sharp. "How long?" "At least 8 months," I whispered. His silence stretched like thunder before he finally stood. "Carlos Torres will never work in this city again. I'll see to that personally." By Wednesday, the story had reached the press. A journalist I trusted ran it like wildfire. The charming real estate mogul who had stolen his wife's business, betrayed his investor, and carried on an affair with the investor's wife. By Thursday, Maria's restaurant was crumbling under its own weight. I handed her the documents showing exactly how Carlos had stolen from me to prop up her failing business. Her face drained of color. "You can't prove I can," I said coldly and walked out. And Friday, was the day Carlos's world collapsed. He woke up to headlines calling him a fraud. His real estate license suspended, Roberto withdrawing all funding, his mother facing lawsuits. Isabella's reputation shattered. He stumbled into the kitchen to find divorce papers waiting on the table where his morning coffee should have been. I wasn't there to watch him break. I was already in my new office with Antonio, signing contracts with the clients who had abandoned him for me. He thought he had built a kingdom, but by the end of that week, he was standing in the ruins of it, holding nothing but the ashes of the life he tried to steal. And me. For the first time in years, I was free. 6 months later, I stood at the top of a glass tower with my name etched across its entrance, Torres Design Development. The irony of keeping his last name wasn't lost on me, but this was different. This wasn't his legacy. This was mine. My company, my vision, my rebirth. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Grandview Hotel rising from the skyline, the project that was supposed to be his triumph, but became the cornerstone of mine. My designs, my blood, my fire turned into steel and concrete. Carlos had lost everything. The real estate board revoked his license permanently after the investigation uncovered years of fraud. The story of his betrayal of me, of Roberto, of the clients he stole spread beyond the city. His name became synonymous with deceit. Employers wanted nothing to do with him. Investors shut their doors before he could even knock. Last I heard, he was working at a car dealership 3 hours away, trying to sell used sedans to families who would never know he once thought himself untouchable. Isabella fared no better. Her marriage to Roberto collapsed under the weight of her lies. She tried to build a future with Carlos, but without money, without reputation, their bond dissolved like sugar in water. She left him within weeks, retreating to her parents' estate. Her name dragged through the mud of every business circle. Maria's restaurant closed when the lawsuits drained her dry. She blamed Carlos for the ruin, but the truth was she had sown her own destruction the moment she taught him how to despise me. Meanwhile, my world had expanded in ways I never thought possible. Antonio and I had grown the business beyond anything I could have dreamed. 12 employees now filled the office, their voices humming with ideas and ambition. Developers across the state sought us out. Awards lined the shelves, each one a reminder that my work had always been worthy of recognition, of respect, of everything Carlos had tried to deny me. And then there was Antonio himself. He had stood beside me in the storm, steady as the earth under my feet. He had seen me at my lowest when I was broken and bleeding from betrayal, and he had chosen not to save me, but to stand with me while I saved myself. Somewhere along the way, our partnership deepened into something I once thought I would never feel again. Love, but not the kind Carlos had pretended to give me. Real love. The kind that doesn't consume but builds. One afternoon, as I was reviewing contracts for an expansion into Miami, my assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you, says it's personal." I looked up and there he was. Carlos, standing in the doorway of the empire I had built without him. He looked nothing like the man I once loved. Thinner, unshaven, the cheap suit hanging off his frame. His eyes carried the weight of someone who had lost everything and realized too late what he had thrown away. "Nina, please, just 5 minutes." His voice was small, broken. Against my better judgment, I nodded to my assistant, who reluctantly left us alone. He sat down across from me, looking around at the office. "This is incredible. You did all this?" "Antonio and I built this," I said evenly, with honesty, with respect. He nodded, his gaze dropping to the ring on my finger, the one Antonio had placed there when he asked me to marry him. "I heard about the engagement. Congratulations." "Thank you." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he swallowed hard. "I came to apologize. For everything. The affair, the lies, the theft. I was wrong. I was weak. I let my mother poison me." I leaned back, studying him. "Your mother didn't make you cheat, Carlos. She didn't make you steal from me. She didn't make you plan to erase me. Those were your choices." He flinched. "I know. I take full responsibility. I miss you. I miss us." "There was no us," I said softly but firmly. "There was me loving you completely, and there was you pretending to love me while plotting my destruction. That isn't a marriage. That's a con." He pressed his palms together, his voice cracking. "What can I do? How can I make this right?" "You can't," I said. "Some betrayals can't be undone." For a long moment, he just sat there, hollow and small. Finally, he stood. "I'm glad you're happy. You deserve it." When he left, I stared at the skyline outside my window, at the hotel that rose because I refused to stay broken. The voice note that shattered my world had actually saved me. It had freed me from a man who never loved me, who only loved what I could give him. That night, Antonio texted me. "Dinner tonight, I have news about Miami." I smiled, feeling the warmth of a future built on truth, not lies. I had learned the hardest lesson of my life, that love without respect is just manipulation, and trust without honesty is a weapon waiting to be used against you. Carlos had tried to destroy me, but instead he had set me free, and in that freedom I found not just revenge but myself. So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever felt the ground collapse beneath you because someone you trusted turned out to be a stranger, remember this. Sometimes the ending you fear is the beginning you need. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever found strength in the ruins of betrayal? I want to hear your stories too.